Well, unbelievable news now from the DNI. Of course, Tulsi Gabbard know this story over the past few days. As we now know, the Obama administration was directly involved in covering up and pushing the Russia collusion narrative, even after they knew it was a lie. In response, former President Trump calling for a DOJ investigation into these allegations. This morning, Trump was asked directly who should the DOJ criminally target? And he didn't mince words. Listen.
From your perspective, who should the DOJ target as part of their investigation? What specific figures in the Obama administration?
Well, based on what I read, and I read pretty much what you read, it would be President Obama. He started it. And Biden was there with him, and Comey was there, and Clapper. The whole group was there. Brennan, they were all there in a room. Right here, this was the room. This is much more beautiful than it was then, but that's okay.
Now, to help us unpack all of this, we're joined by George Papadopoulos, his former foreign policy advisor to President Trump's campaign in 2016, someone who found himself at the center of the Mueller investigation, of course, had the deep state targeting him. Back in 2019, Papadopoulos released this book, Deep State Target, How I Got Caught in the Crosshairs of the Plot to Bring Down the President. He was, of course, pardoned by Trump in December 2020. And George is joining us now. George, welcome back to the show. Good to see you again. Thanks so much for being here.
It's great to be with you both. Thank you.
Why, after so many investigations, this is the question that stands out. Natalie and I were talking about this before the show. Why do we not have this information declassified years ago? Like, why are we just now learning about this thanks to Tulsi Gabbard at the DNI? What do you make of this?
Well, I think that's a great question. And I think the main reason this stuff was willfully suppressed is because I think it exposes a Western intelligence scandal that basically will uproot the American public intelligence services, both domestically and in NATO, because I think a lot of NATO Western-oriented countries were involved in Obamagate against President Trump, including the Five Eyes groups, other countries in Europe, potentially Ukraine. And then, of course, you have President Obama's fingerprints all over this operation, along with the CIA director, the FBI director, the former DNI. So this is the biggest intelligence scandal that the world has ever seen. And I use the word world because there were other countries involved. So, of course, given the nature of this issue, it was in the interest of the deep state or the CIA, the FBI, some of these special counsels like Durham and Horowitz and Mueller to cover it up in the hope that Trump would never be reelected, that MAGA would essentially evaporate after the January 6th issue, and that we would never hear about this ever again, and that history would have been ridden with falsities, innuendo, and by the Obama administration's fake narrative. So that's, I guess, a long-winded answer into why I think this has been covered up. I think there's a lot needs to come out before we have the full picture.
Now, the book, The Plot Against the President, does a great job of laying out who did what. A lot of it started with the Steele dossier, which was funded by Hillary Clinton's campaign. So why do you think now we are so focused on Obama? Whereas Hillary Clinton wasn't even in that Brady Bunch graphic that the president tweeted. Why not? Where's she missing in this? She is just as guilty, if you know the true story.
Well, here's what I think. I think when you are competing in politics, you go after your opponent with political opposition research. You try to dirty that person up. And what the Steele dossier really was a financed oppo hit piece against Trump that a campaign does. They spend millions of dollars trying to dig up anything that they possibly can. We saw this during, various confirmation hearings and during the Supreme Court hearings with Kavanaugh and others. Obviously, it's going to happen during a presidential campaign season. So I don't think it's illegal for what Hillary did. What was illegal was for the intelligence community, along with a sitting president and the CIA, to take that information and to distribute it within FISA warrants that were illegally obtained. That is defrauding a FISA court and basically defrauding the U.S. government and usurping civil liberties. So what Hillary did was a dirty trick, and of course it was wrong, but she was running up against Trump. The people that really were involved in illegal activities were the people that disseminated that fake information in order to surveil illegally a presidential campaign. And that's exactly what happened. And Barack Obama was the one running the show.
Do you believe that President Obama himself was aware of the FBI's targeting of the Trump campaign staff like yourself? Or do you think that this was just limited to the intelligence officials like Brennan and Clapper?
I think that this operation, and I'm telling you, and I've been saying this for years, going back to 2018, that if we actually declassify the origins of how this entire scandal started, it goes back into 2015, not 2016. In order for this type of momentum to have been generated to target individuals of a rival presidential campaign from various governments, intelligence agencies, the domestic intelligence agencies, there's only one man or woman on planet Earth who has that power to cultivate that type of force to target political opponents. That person was Barack Obama, President Barack Obama. I think President Barack Obama had his fingers all over this going back long before Crossfire Hurricane ever emerged. If you actually remember, what Special Counsel John Durham's conclusions were two conclusions. One, that Crossfire Hurricane did not start the way that Mueller or Horowitz said it did. And secondly, he said that the FBI was involved in illegal activities. Besides that, he could go much further. We now have evidence that Obama was involved because Gabbard decided to declassify this information and to deliver it to the public. Look back at this, when history writes this story for the first time ever in a proper fashion, you're going to understand that President Obama started this in 2015, likely looking at every other presidential campaign that had a chance to defeat Hillary Clinton. Those campaigns were targeted with domestic and global intelligence. That continued through 2016 and into the Trump presidency. And I think if President Trump decides to really go after Obama, he's going to have to declassify the files of why Durham said the investigation didn't start the way that Mueller or Horowitz did. If he decides to simply stick to this December meeting and continue thereafter, it's likely going to make Obama look like somebody bad, somebody that was trying to meddle in the election or to basically stop Trump's rise. But I don't think they're going to deliver any handcuffs.
Hillsdale offers more than 40 free online courses. That's right, 40 free online courses so you can learn about the works of C.S. Lewis, stories in the book of Genesis, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution, the rise and fall of the Roman Republic, all of this with the fantastic offerings of Hillsdale. They are self-paced, so you can start them and finish them whenever and wherever. It's a free course. We want to let you know that there's a new one called Introduction to Aristotle's Ethics, How to Lead a Good Life. Have you ever wondered, how do we even define what a good life is? How can you live one? In this course, Hillsdale College president Larry P. Arnn leads you through the most important lessons of Aristotle's ethics, including teachings about the human nature, the meaning of a good life, the virtues necessary for happiness. So check that out. Again, that's totally free. So right now you can enroll by heading on over to hillsdale.edu/redacted. There's no cost. It's easy to get started. One more time, that's hillsdale.edu/redacted. To enroll for free. One more time, that's hillsdale.edu. Now, speaking of handcuffs, because you were targeted by the Mueller investigation, which most of us should feel, and I have for a long time since I've understood this scam, really upset that we were baited to be misled about Trump's Russian connections, that it took up millions of U.S. taxpayer dollars and so much energy out of the room during the first Trump administration. But you were actually targeted and sent to prison. General Flynn also had his life dragged through the mud, and he sued. What are you going to do now that this is proven that you were targeted for political purposes?
Well, certainly all options are on the table right now. I have a great team of lawyers looking at this situation within a scrupulous manner. I think if we have more information that's declassified about exactly who was targeting me, why, what their motivations were, whether it was conducted in an illegal manner, then certainly there likely will be some legal recourse. I think numerous people have legal cases, but I'm still waiting to see where this goes because while this is a good start, as I explained a little bit ago, I think there has to be a lot more that has to be declassified and delivered to not only people like myself, General Flynn, but for the American people, most importantly, so that we finally understand how deep and corroded this scandal really was and how high it went, besides Obama having this bizarre meeting that was declassified.
I mean, the American people were robbed of a presidency that they voted for. And Trump's Department of Justice was caught up in this fake story created, perpetrated by Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Joe Biden. It is treason. Do you think that we're going to see arrests? What do you hope what do you hope will happen?
When I saw both John Brennan and Jim Comey simultaneously being placed under criminal investigation, the first thing that came to my mind was that there was a criminal conspiracy involving both the FBI and the CIA. Now, people ask, how was the CIA even involved? How could Brennan be involved in a criminal conspiracy just because he decided to alter some facts that Obama pressured him into? And the reason I think that Brennan is involved is because the CIA, with these other agencies and these governments, they involve themselves directly to surveil the Trump campaign and people associated with the Trump campaign. That's why the investigation started in London. If you go by the facts that have been presented to the world, the investigation started in London. There were operatives in London that basically conjured this thing up. That later on was passed to people like Jim Comey, who created the momentum domestically to get the fake warrants, to spy domestically, and then to bring on Mueller to cover up what Comey did, and then to create the silent coup. So I think Brennan and Comey are really the ultimate targets of this investigation, and they're going to likely use their testimony or what they did to dirty up Obama. But unfortunately, based on the presidential immunity and whether President Trump and Gabbard want to go all the way and declassify the real facts, I don't think Obama is going to be touched in a criminal matter. If they do declassify all the relevant information about things that I explained going back into 2015 about how Obama with the CIA was basically creating this fake story to spy on people, you could probably touch Obama too. Right now, I think Brennan and Comey are the targets.
I think you're right about that. And, so many people in the chat room right now are just saying no one ever gets arrested. No one ever gets arrested. And I think we're just fed up with this. This is treason at the highest level. I want to put up a graphic that you tweeted today. Obamagate is this giant cruise ship, the size of this thing, and Watergate, this like little dinghy floating out there. I mean, that's how big this is. I think the American people we need people to be arrested. We need perp walks. We need people in handcuffs.
But at the very least, there should be a reputational consequence to having done this for the Democrats. The same way, and I don't mean to yell at you, I'm just mad. This should be an open and shut case of corruption within the Democrats. We saw it just a year ago this week. Kamala Harris cooed Joe Biden in order to take over the presidential election. How much corruption can people observe? That's not to say Republicans are blameless, but come on. When's this slime going to stick to them?
Well, that's a great question. And look what happened when they weren't held accountable in 2016. They started off with the impeachment 1.0, impeachment 2.0, the CIA once again interfering in the 2020 election by willfully suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story. So the CIA has basically meddled in the last three elections because they weren't held accountable in 2016. So I completely agree with you. If they aren't prosecuted, if people at the CIA, the FBI, or Brennan and Comey, and these people that were running the show, and likely Obama, I argue that Obama was directly involved. I think Obama was the one that actually initiated this to make sure that Hillary's opponents were either dirty up, spun, and assured that Hillary would win. And if Hillary didn't win, that person, whoever would have ascended to the Oval Office, would have been crippled from day one. That's exactly what Mueller and Comey tried to do. It failed, fortunately, because we fought back. So obviously, with all of these shenanigans that went into this, all the illegal activities, the fraudulent FISA warrants, the illegal surveillance, the breaking in, you mentioned Watergate, and you showed the post that I made on X. Watergate was basically a break-in. This was an electronic break-in by the government to spy on a rival presidential campaign to tilt an election. So obviously, this is much bigger. So if these people aren't prosecuted or indicted, or at least everything being declassified, because you mentioned that this is about reputations as well. If you don't want to prosecute them, at least declassify everything so that you can allow the American people to understand really what happened. And it could likely tilt the balance of power going into the next election, potentially the midterms of next election. If you don't, people are going to ask themselves, is this a cover-up because Epstein wasn't, the Epstein files weren't released? A lot of people are asking that question. Are you distracting from that? Is there something else going on? Are you going to go all the way? I think President Trump will go all the way. And I think the American people believe that too.
George Papadopoulos, thank you so much. I know crazy times right now, and hopefully you get some answers on this front as well. George, great to see you. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.